I'm just going to join the computer sound since this thing's not cooperating for me.
read anything.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
We're going to get started, and Deb and I are on the phone, and I have the chat box up right now. And if you can hear me okay, if one or two of you could go ahead and just type in yes or okay, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, perfect. So I'm seeing the yeses come in. I have gone ahead and muted everybody that is on the phone and or on the computer. And you can unmute yourself if you want to talk, but at this time I would ask that you all stay muted until we have a time to ask questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I know we're a couple of minutes late, but we're going to go through the PowerPoint slide. And just to let you know who we are, I'm Heidi Schultz, and I'm here with
Deb Appleton from OSPI 21st Century Community Learning Centers program. And we want to welcome everyone to our bidders conference for our new grant application today.
Yes, so thank you for joining. And we want to let everybody know that this webinar with all the materials, the webinar will be recorded and all of the materials will be posted on our 21st Century website today. The 21st Century RFP request for applications is already on there. The iGrant pages will be available today, and then the rubric will be available today, and we will post the PowerPoint slides. And I just want to let everybody know that the slides are pretty wordy, and they really follow the RFP sequence in the first half, and in the second half it really follows the application/rubric sequence. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll stop in the middle for questions, and then we're going to finish out the second half, and if there's time at the end to answer questions, we can do that too. Today's objectives are to review the important dates, submission timelines, and the requirements for the grant application. We're going to review major components of this year's 18-19 21st Century grant application, and then follow up with questions. The overview and the sequence of today's webinar is the introduction and timeline. I'm just going to take a second here to mute everybody because I'm hearing a little bit of background noise.
Yeah, so please mute yourselves too.
Thank you. The first couple of slides are going to be about the introduction timeline, available funding, the federal statutory provisions as far as the purpose, definitions, the priorities, our activities, and evaluations, the Washington State program requirements, and then the Washington State performance goals and indicators, application instructions, and scoring rubric, and followed by the Q&A.
I think one thing that's good to let you know too right up front is there are some changes this year as a result of the ESSA implementation. We made most of the changes last year in the application, but this year the rubric is different, and some of the requirements in terms of the narrative and in the application are different.
So funding is made available from the U.S. Department of Education under Title IV, Part B, as authorized under the Every Student Succeeds Act. This year, we anticipate awarding about $4 million to Cohort 15 and about 10 projects or 10 grantees. No grant will be awarded for less than $100,000 and no more than $500,000. Grants are awarded dependent upon federal funding for up to 5 years and past grantee performance. The timeline for this competitive grant competition is today, May 1st, 2018. The RFP is available in iGrant. Today we're also doing the bidders conference. Proposals are due in iGrants by 4 p.m., marked OSPI review, and we will definitely go over that in more detail further down the road as far as how to access and navigate iGrants. July 2nd, Cohort 15 will be notified, And also July 2nd, funds available and program implementation may begin. If you are somebody who's familiar with 21st Century, this is a new date. We've moved up the timeline a bit to hopefully kickstart programs, to get programs started earlier, and recruiting and hiring and getting students and budgets approved and all that kind of stuff that happens before programs start. July 2nd through August 31st, 2019 is the first fiscal year. And then years 2 through 5, dependent upon federal funding and past grantee performance, the timeline's going to move back a little bit to the original timeline, which will be September 1st through August 31st, which is always the program grant cycle. But for the very first year, just to get up and running, July 2nd is what's going to be happening this year.
And that's a really, really significant change from the past. So folks really need to take the opportunity. We know that a lot of school district budget cycles don't start till the beginning of the school year, but we're making this award so that early, because we are starting off with a rigorous training schedule for new grantees October 3rd. So all staff needs to be on board, people need to be hired, and services started and ready to go.
And then lastly, number 7 is October 1st, 2018 is the first day of year 1 of your program. We would expect that you are serving kids on this day. So this is more background information straight out of the statute for 21st Century Title 4B, which gives the purpose of the program, which offers opportunities for communities to establish or expand activities in community learning centers. And they have 3 objectives here, which are to provide opportunities for academic enrichment and offer a broad array of additional services. There are tons of activities that are allowable under this statute, such as youth development, service learning, nutrition and health, literacy, math, science, STEM, internship apprentices. It's also linked to career and technical education activities for high school and beyond. If you can prove that in your application, that is something that Title IV was reauthorized for. And then also families is a huge component of this program, which we will want to see in your application as well, is how you're serving families, your goals for families. And it's really something that's sustained and engaged over time, that you can show growth in families in one area or another.
Which is a change this year. We are actually requiring a minimum number of hours for family participation and engagement. So everyone who submits must have that in their plan, or it would be considered an incomplete application.
This is the definition from the Community Learning Center. And now that I think about it, I'll put the Title IV Part B statute on the website too, so you can follow along or look through it after the webinar if you're interested in this kind of stuff, to just really read it and look at it. So really the term from Department of Ed about community learning centers are for students to meet the challenging state academic standards, which is a new term under the reauthorization, and to meet those standards by offering a broad academic enrichment activities that are before school, after school, or when school is not in session. The activities reinforce and complement the regular school day. So how are they linked to the regular school day? They're targeted to students' academic needs and in line with instruction. And also, again, you'll see that family part. It's the Community Learning Center offers families of students served opportunities for engagement in their children's education. This is a second definition, expanded learning program activities. Just to tell you right up front, this is something that Washington State is not currently implementing. It's something that we're waiting for more non-regulatory guidance from the Department of Ed. It's a little bit tricky to try to incorporate this portion into a 21st century learning program. If you're interested in knowing more about what it is it's additional enrichment and engagement activities that are an additional 300 program hours either before school or after school. It's kind of an extension of the school day. And at the same time, it's something that you cannot supplant the regular school day, which is where it gets a little bit tricky. And it's carried out by entities that meet the requirements of this language down here, subsection I. And so, like I said, again, we're putting it in the RFP just to let you know what it is if you happen to read it in the statute, although this year we are not implementing expanded learning program activities. External organizations is a new term. It's a nonprofit organization with a record of success in running or working with before and after school programs. In the case of where there's a community that there is no such organization, a nonprofit organization in the community that enters into a written agreement or partnership with an organization described as to receive mentoring or guidance in running or working with before and after school programs. So this is encouraged if you have an external organization in your community. If you have questions about whether or not it is an external organization, please reach out and ask. It's hard to give a really specific example about what an external organization would be in your community because they may all look different, yet fall under this umbrella of an external organization. So the rigorous peer review process is what we use every year to read and score grants. We do a competitive procurement here at OSPI. It's basically a request for qualifications or requests for applications. And it has specific duties or expertise that we're looking for in persons to be a peer reviewer for applications. So Deb and I do not read and score the applications here. We read them for completeness and check off the box that everything was turned in that was supposed to be turned in. But at the end of the day, these people are chosen based off of their expertise, and they receive quite a bit of training before they read and score grants. And the highest cumulative score of grants becomes the selected grantees for this competition.
Although we may not be the people who are reading the grants, we do read the grants. I mean, we're not scoring the grants. And we facilitate the review of the grants and panels of reviewers. So we are participating in the process, but we're not scoring grants.
Here are the statutory program priorities. So this also comes straight out of the statute that is recommended for states to put in their RFP to give priorities for in applications. And so it is applications that are proposing to target services to students who primarily attend schools who are implementing comprehensive support or targeted support activities that are for improvement activities or other schools determined by the local education agency to be in need of intervention. It's also for schools that are receiving Title I Part A, which is the Title I schools, submitted jointly by eligible entities consisting of not less than one Title I school and local education agency and another eligible entity partner, and applications demonstrating that the activities proposed in this application are not accessible to students who would not otherwise be served.
So back up to the first point about implementing comprehensive support and improvement activities. We will talk about that a little bit later and what that means, because that's new terminology in terms of our accountability framework. It used to say priority and focus schools under ESEA. And then the second part of that is a priority for enrolling students who may be at risk of academic failure, dropping out of school, involvement in criminal or delinquent activities, and the families of students served. So that's a really important piece, because that is what this program is meant to serve. That's who this program is meant to serve, according to the statute. So it's not a program for all kids. It's for kids who are at risk of academic failure.
This next slide is the Washington State priorities for funding, and these are a little bit different from the past couple of years. There are 7 priorities this year instead of, I think the last couple of years there were 13 or 14 priorities. And so our priorities for funding, where you can receive additional points in your application if you propose to target services to highest levels of poverty, which is 80% or more based off of the free and reduced price lunch eligibility. The highest percentage of students not meeting proficiency in literacy and mathematics. Local education agencies receiving funds under Part A of Title I. Schools who are implementing comprehensive support and improvement activities or targeted support and improvement activities. The highest percentage of racial and ethnic minorities of the targeted students and families. Programs that target the highest percentage of students and families identified as English learning. And middle and high school programs that build career readiness and workforce readiness skills. And a few of these priorities for funding in here that talk about serving the highest percentage, those are percentages that we get from the OSPI student data warehouse that we will figure out in your application, especially if you're applying for more than one site. It will give a weighted score. And this is also really important here at the very bottom of your screen. It's italicized. And we have to see evidence of these priorities in certain parts of your application, which are the profile page, the narrative, the needs statement, and the quality of project design.
And hopefully in your evaluation model.
This is a description of comprehensive and targeted schools. This is kind of a fairly new term. OSPI has been working on the analytics to identify the comprehensive and targeted schools for more than a year now. And it's something that just became available and public on our website in March. And so this is kind of something that used to play off of the target and focus schools, but now it's called comprehensive and targeted. And according to ESSA, it states must annually meaningfully differentiate schools and specify some measures that must be included and give flexibility on other measures. Each measure is mapped from a percentage to a 1 to 10 score. Scores are combined to yield an overall index score ranging from 1 to 10. So these must be all the analytics from the OSPI.
Yeah, this is from the ESSA website under federal programs. On the OSPI website, go to federal programs under programs and offices, and then go to ESSA. And this is called the accountability framework. This is a slide out of the presentation that's on their website, but they have this very cool graphic that explains shows you kind of an infographic on their website that we have provided a link to in the RFP. And you can actually go to that link and look up any school district, and it will show you all the schools available in that district and their designation, whether they're targeted, comprehensive, or foundational. And foundational is kind of a universal support, so that is not what we're targeting.
There are 14 authorized activities in ESSA, and under some of these activities, it can be a little bit broad about what that may be. And so it's important that you write in your application the activities that you're planning on doing in your after-school program, because if you happen to get awarded a grant, those are the activities that will be approved for you to be able to have in your program. And if you happen to sway too far away from something that's way too broad, then you have to do an amendment for that. And so, of course, there's academic enrichment learning programs. that are aligned with challenging state academic standards and local academic standards, well-rounded education activities, literacy programs, programs that support healthy and active lifestyles, services for individuals with disabilities, programs that provide after-school activities for students who are English learners that emphasize language skills and academic achievement, which is also a program priority for funding, cultural programs, telecommunications and technology, expanded library, parenting skills, and parent involvement in family literacy. Programs that provide assistance to students who have been truant, suspended, or expelled that will improve academic achievement, drug and violence prevention programs, STEM programs, and then also programs that partner with in-demand fields of the local workforce that build career competencies and career readiness skills. So family engagement and educational services is something that we've been talking about in this webinar, and it was mentioned earlier that community learning centers are required to offer a minimum of 4 hours per month to families of students served in their program. And this can include educational activities, opportunities for literacy, educational development, and they're really services that are defined as ongoing, have a sufficient duration, they're sustainable, and you can see changes in family, and or your goal is you're striving towards making changes in the family according to what kind of educational opportunities that you're offering to them. And then over here on the right-hand side, there's 9 topics that have been included in the RFP that are allowable and give examples of activities that you can offer to families that may be sustained, sufficient, ongoing, and may make changes in the family. So things like leadership, reading and literacy, GED, English language classes, employment, education, engagement workshops that are taught in the home language, and programs that support the role of the community and family, maybe a train-the-trainer model to empower parents and families. So the evaluation section is more informational in the RFP in the first half. And so the program activities will undergo a periodic, I'm sorry, let me back up. This is a definition straight out of ESSA, and it says that the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program shall undergo a periodic evaluation in conjunction with the state education evaluation, which is us, to assess programs' progress toward achieving the goal of providing high-quality opportunities for academic enrichment and overall student success. Although the definition says periodic evaluation, here in Washington State, we do require an annual evaluation from each program. And it says that the evaluation results are used to refine, improve, and strengthen the program, and to refine the performance measures, made available to the public upon request with public notice of such availability, and also used by us to determine whether a subgrant is eligible to be renewed for another year. So like I said in the beginning, continued funding based off of available funding and past grantee performance. This is an area that we look at to determine additional funding for the following year if you're doing everything you said you did in your grant application. So eligible entity. This is an area that we typically get the most questions about. So I'll try to explain as best as I can. The eligible entity term, this whole slide right here is also straight out of Title IV Part B ESSA. And it means a local education agency, an LEA and or school district, a community-based organization, Indian tribe or tribal organization, another public or private entity, or a consortium of 2 or more agencies, organizations, or entities For example, a local school district, also referred to as a local education agency serving Title I eligible schools, a public or private community-based organization, a faith-based organization, and an Indian tribal organizations. So these 1 through 4 are all considered eligible entities that may apply for a 21st century grant.
So just to clarify, this slide is according to the federal statute, who is eligible to apply for a grant, meaning who is eligible to be the fiscal agent and receive the grant award. Now Heidi will go more in detail about what an eligible entity partnership is, which is a requirement for Washington State.
So a partnership requirement, yes, is absolutely a requirement to apply for a 21st century grant. And just to let you know, if you apply without a partner or if you apply with somebody who you may think is a partner but is not, it could disqualify you from getting your grant read. And we'll kind of go into more detail about that too. So a school district with designated high poverty schools, which is 40% or higher based off of free and reduced lunch price rates, that are providing Title I services and at least one community-based external organization can be considered an eligible entity partnership. And for the purposes of this grant, an educational agency, an ESD, is considered an LEA or a school district. And a partnership between a school district or ESD or 2 or more school districts would not be considered an eligible entity partnership. So for example, if you're an ESD and you're applying with a school district, that wouldn't work. You would have to apply as an ESD with a school district and a community-based organization to be considered a partnership, because in terms of this application process, an ESD is considered a school district. So this is really important, and I also want to let you know that this is straight out of the RFP pages too, if you want to study this and read this more. And please also ask questions if you have a partner lined up and you're wondering or considering them to apply with and you're not really sure if it would be strong and or pass the review process, please ask.
So one thing that's really important to say up front, this is the partnership piece of this makes you eligible to apply. If you do not pass the screening test on the application for having primary partners that qualify under the criteria Heidi's going to talk about, then you will be receiving a call from us, possibly, or you will be eliminated from the application process. We, many years ago, this program, you could just get a superintendent to sign a letter of support and say, yeah, they'll be your partner, but that is not what we're looking for anymore. We are looking for meaningful engagement and support of in-kind dollars, so it needs to show up in your budget and a variety of other places, and providing evidence that there is a collaboration and an extensive partnership.
So number 1 summarizes kind of what the eligible entity partnership said on the previous page about applying with an LEA, a school district, a high poverty school that's Title I serving or Title I eligible. Another really important piece of this is that the partnership and the primary partner is making significant contributions to the program. And we would see that as evidence in your grant goals, your outcomes, and providing either direct financial support or in-kind support, which we will be able to see in your budget narrative.
And it can't be a primary contracted partner. So we do have folks who are contracted for some services and providing equal or more resources as in-kind, which would qualify them as an eligible partner. But a partner cannot be solely a contracted relationship that the grant is paying for. That's a vendor or a provider.
We'll want to see that the school district administration and at least one community-based organization collaborated extensively in the planning and design of the program. And each partner organization has substantial roles to play in the program implementation and delivery of services, program evaluation, and program improvement plans. So this is a really important piece because sometimes there are grant writers writing the grant and then they get awarded the grant and they hand off the project to somebody, and it has to have validity to the partnership, not just, yes, I'm going to support you. We really want to be able to see in your narrative that there is significant commitment up front in the planning and design, and also this, remember, this is a 5-year grant, and so this is a 5-year, up to a 5-year commitment that they're saying that they're going to support you in certain areas that you write into your grant application. So that's really important to remember. And organizations share resources to carry out their roles, and contributions are reflected in the budget narrative. And partners have significant and ongoing involvement in the management and oversight of the program. A formal memorandum of agreement, or an MOA, is also a requirement to apply and will get you past the screening. If there's no MOA, then you probably, or you won't get past the screening. And the MOA is among the partners and the fiscal agent. And the fiscal agent, in purposes of this grant, is the person who is applying for the grant in iGrants. So either the school district, the ESD, or community-based organization that is actually going to be receiving the money is the fiscal agent. And we'll want to see that your MOA is current and it's signed by all of these, the really important people who are going to have responsibilities and oversight in this project. And your MOA will identify partner obligations and contributions for cash, in-kind, or contracted services if applicable. And as previously stated, if the primary partner is contracted for services that is in an amount of funds that is a lot compared to what you're requesting in your application, it won't appear as if they're a partner. It will appear as if they're a contractor and would not be considered a primary partner in terms of this project.
And this is pretty much outlined in detail in the application, so pay really close attention to this piece. The MOA, if it's not clearly outlined or designating the resources that each partner is providing, and there's evidence of that in the budget, like Heidi said, that's where we'll be looking to see evidence.
And eligible entity partners engage in collective planning, implementation, evaluation, and planning for sustainability. And again, a signed data sharing agreement amongst all partners. And that will come up again towards the end of the slides in the rubric.
We haven't got this in the slide here, but one thing that's really important to note is, and it's in the RFP, and this is where we get a lot of questions, eligible entity partners, which are the primary partners in a grant that make you eligible to apply for it, cannot apply for more than one grant in the grant cycle. So, and what we get is, there are large organizations in the state that provide youth development services that have chapters and their own sub-chapters or organizations in different communities. And we're basically talking about they would not be able to submit more than one project for that community or that chapter that they have. Say like, they might cover 2 counties, like Pierce and Kitsap County. We would not expect to see that organization apply twice as a primary partner. So we have had that question already come up, and folks just need to, if you have two communities that are close together using the same partners, you might think about collaborating on a single application, or you might need to find additional partners that would qualify as an eligible entity partner. But you definitely want to work with if you decide not to collaborate on a grant, you would want to collaborate on the selection of partners between you if you're both going to submit a grant, so one of you doesn't get deleted. Yeah.
So this is the program design part of the application, which lets you know about the staffing model that we want to see that is required. And so programs and program applications must employ at least a half-time or greater site coordinator per site responsible for overseeing a certain site, at least a half-time director responsible for meeting grant requirements and supervising site coordinators. A single site may employ a 0.75 or greater combined site coordinator and director. And so if you're a big project and if you're applying for the full amount of money, it would make more sense for your project to have a full-time director and maybe at least a half-time or more than that site coordinators per site. The intensity and duration of services for the school year. All programs are expected to operate 35 weeks in a school year, not inclusive of school breaks, from September through June or up to the last week of the regular school day, with a total of 12 hours in a typical week, at least 4 hours per day, and 4 days per week and at least 2 hours per day. And when we say September through June, that means operational, staff are hired, serving kids, having programs, quite literally when school starts up again, because programs are funded pretty much year-round, although we have a program start and end date. You should be budgeting and planning to start services when school starts. And intensity and duration of services for summer. So all programs are required to have a summer component. And the summer program is a minimum of 20 hours a week for a minimum of 4 weeks to the targeted population of students that are at risk of summer learning loss, and also to target those kids that you want to have come to your after-school program. So your first year, September through June, you may want to, or you will target those kids that you're serving through the school year, and then also possibly targeting those kids that you get referred to by teachers who may be at risk for summer learning loss, and those are also the kids that you can recruit and try to maintain for the following school year too.
And this is an increase in the number of weeks that we're requiring this year for regular school programming, and it's really important to think about that piece about not inclusive of school breaks. All school calendars are available on the OSPI website. I think it's under the parents link, because it shows all of the vacations for every school district for the year. And if it's not showing next year's calendar yet, it's pretty consistent year to year, so you could get an idea of what that looks like. I just kind of wanted to make a comment here too. One of the main threads of the new ESSA statute is to think about braiding funds and think about how you deliver services by collaborating with other programs, other federal programs, or even other private or private for-profit programs. So when we're talking about programs, we're expecting a collaboration and a coordination with any other programs that you might actually look at expanding the services that are already available, but that doesn't mean you're a standalone program. You're working with the other programs to provide a continuum of services to all the kids in the community. And the same for summer programs. You could work with Title I, 3 migrant bilingual, a variety of other state programs, LAP. There's a new federal program called Title 4A, which is actually quite open. It's a flow-through grant to districts, and it allows for out-of-school time programming. So just wanted to put that plug in there.
These are some 21st century federal statute requirements required at the federal level and at the state level, that all centers have to be safe and easily accessible, transport students safely to and from school. So transportation cannot be a barrier to services. And so that's something you really want to consider in your grant application. It's also an area that can get very expensive. And so really negotiating with your school district about how you can share resources or share costs for transportation makes for a higher quality proposal too. You must disseminate information about the center to the wider community, align with challenging state academic standards, coordinate with other federal, state, and local programs, collaborate with the schools the students attend. You must have a sustainability plan in anticipation of the grant expiration. So your sustainability plan can't be, we're going to write another grant. So this is really important. This is something that you'll get points for in your rubric, to really start thinking about this now, about what that will look like in year 5.5 or 6 as far as sustainability.
Or maybe even year 2, 3, 4, and how you can increase the community collaboration and your in-kind partnerships over time, so that by the time you get to year 5, you're ready to sail.
Programs must provide equitable services and timely consultation to private schools. We have a new private school department here at OSPI. And if you're thinking about applying, you need to meet with your district level federal programs people and inform them that you're thinking about applying and what activities you're going to offer and what students you are going to target for your program. Because for 21st century, you have to offer the activities to private school students that meet your targeted population that you're proposing to provide services to in your application.
And you are actually required to consult with any private schools that have indicated an interest in participating in the 21st CCLC program that are in your region. And our website has a link to the private school page on the OSPI website. And on that page, there's a report about what districts are interested in participating. So Heidi and I, that report just got finalized yesterday. So we will be posting that report on our website today, hopefully, in an Excel spreadsheet. There are about, we reviewed it yesterday, there's about 80 districts who have, or 80, districts who have private schools who are interested in participating in 21st CCLC programs. So it would be your responsibility, and there is a question in the RFP, how did you consult with private schools in the development of this application? It would be your responsibility to call them up, tell them, invite them to a planning meeting and thinking about how you might work together.
And number 9 is conduct an annual external evaluation of the program's effectiveness in meeting the program goals. So this is kind of a skip off of the last one, the data and evaluation requirements at the local level. Grantees must on an annual basis participate in the U.S. Department of Education's 21 APR data collection system, which is their online platform to collect data at the local level. Grantees must on an annual basis participate in a local independent evaluation of the program. On an annual basis, you must fully implement the youth program quality intervention and assessment. It is recommended to allocate up to 10% of your budget based on the scope of work for data reporting and local evaluation to your local evaluator. And local evaluation contracts need to be clearly outlined, the scope of work and cost calculations for local evaluations, and that will be evident in your budget narrative. So I put in the RFP this year, there's an RCW that says that you have to have at least 3 informal bids for your local evaluator. So you can't just, if you're somebody who's a returning person who currently has a grant and you're applying for another grant, it's not recommended to write in the name of your evaluator unless you've already got 3 informal bids. And an informal bid can be an email, a phone call, it can be a newspaper article, it can be something you post on your school website. It's just something that really has to be documented, and it has to be fair and equitable and put out there for others to apply for it if they're interested in applying to be your local evaluator. And then at the statewide evaluation level, we contract with an independent evaluation firm to evaluate the effectiveness of our program statewide. And annually, staff, site coordinators, and student surveys will be collected as part of the evaluation activities.
And for your information, there is an evaluation update that was posted in spring, just recently, an evaluation update, including new dates for the federal timelines for data submission. That will give you an idea, because in the RFP, you're asked to develop an evaluation plan and timeline, an evaluation and data collection plan and timeline that accounts for data collection, for the federal data, local evaluation, YPQI, quality assessment, and data submission. So that guidance or that calendar and timeline should help you a lot in thinking about that.
So the 21st century policies, these are kind of a mix between federal policies and state policies. And the first one, the carryover policy, is something that we needed to put in writing. It is in the iGrants pages, but just to let everybody know, starting fresh, applying this year, that our carryover policy here is that you may carry over 5% of your total allocation if you have that much remaining unspent the following year. And carryover dollars become available in November of the following program year. You have to fill out a budget revision and give a little bit of narrative about where you plan or propose to implement these carryover dollars. The renewability of awards policy is a federal policy that is new in ESSA. And it's new language in Title IV Part B that says an eligible entity, somebody receiving a grant, may have their grant renewed based off of the preceding sub-grant period. And so what that means is if you're a grantee in your 5th year, and if we had a way to determine that you were eligible to be renewed for a sub-grant, that would mean that you could possibly be renewed for an additional 5 years, because the law says that you can renew for as many years as what you were awarded before. So at this time, we are not implementing this policy just because we don't really have a rigorous way to evaluate programs to say, yes, you're eligible to receive renewability. And also, there hasn't been any guidance from Department of Ed about the best practices or ways for states to safely and uniformly and equitably award renewability of awards. And it's in writing here in the RFP in case you have questions about it. This is not something currently that we're doing or considering at this time. Also, the program income policy, this is a sticky subject too. And just to let you know upfront, if you're a program that plans on having an activity in your after-school program that may generate funds that started with 21st century dollars, then you absolutely have to get it approved at the state level with some caveats and some other requirements of information that we will have to have from you before this activity can take place.
And that means everything from generating revenue from fundraising or charging fees, which you are allowed under the federal statute. However, fees cannot be a barrier to children in poverty in terms of participating in a program. It would have to be on a sliding scale. But basically the bottom line is that any income generated outside the cost of your grant would need to be, you would need to be able to demonstrate that your program, all that money went back into your program and the cost of your program exceeded your grant award to the amount of revenue that you generated, or you will have to make a refund to the state.
Yeah, there's just a lot of
to the state.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules around this program income, and so we're not saying that it cannot be done. We're just saying that we all want to do it safely and in a way that it's allowed. The Washington State 21st Century Performance Goals and Objectives are new this year. And, oh, well, yeah, revised. I think they kind of look new. And they're in the RFP, and so I suggest taking some time with your team reviewing and reading them. And the goals here are to establish community learning centers, provide opportunities for academic enrichment. These are the same as the purpose. And so also to offer students a broad array of additional services that align with the regular academic program and needs of participating students. Active and meaningful engagement for families, and offer high quality expanded learning opportunities.
So in the past, our Washington performance indicators and objectives have been predominantly aligned with what's called the GEPRA, or the federal performance targets for the program that get reported on to Congress, which was primarily focused on academic and behavioral outcomes for students, with a couple of indicators about collaboration and partnership and timeliness of state grants submitting their applications to the federal government. But we have, through consultation with an evaluation advisory committee that we have for the 21st CCLC program, enhanced and expanded a draft of our performance indicators over the last few years. And we have included them in the RFP this year, so it's important to pay attention to that, because we ask each program to develop a program design and plan of operation, which includes goals, objectives, measures of student success, timelines, and responsible staff. And we require that you align those program plans with the intended performance indicators and targets. Under the new ESSA rules, we are required to align, well, we've always been required to have performance targets or performance indicators developed by each state. And we have expanded ours beyond the GEPRA indicators this year, and they include student outcomes and objectives, program attendance objectives, and program quality and implementation objectives. So we give on the pages in RFP, page 13 through 15, a lot more detail about that, and hope that you keep those indicators and objectives in mind as you develop your program models. And because we will be measuring that as part of all the data collection throughout the year, and those indicators are what we are required to measure continuation funding against. So how well you're doing in implementing your programs, providing quality services, serving the students that you said you would target, etc. So now we're going to move. Well, now we're going to stop for a minute and see if there are any questions. I only see one question in the chat box. So given the number of people we have on the phone, we can't. It's not feasible to open the mics to everyone and have people be heard. So if you could post your questions in the chat box, and we'll answer the question that's there now. The question we have is, would starting the second week of September be allowed? We are not able to get busing until then. They need time to get snacks and busing situated. In the RFP for new grantees, October 1st is the deadline for all program services to start. That means all staff needs to be hired, transportation worked out, kids recruited, families recruited, and all of your staff and partners in place, and you're ready to roll. So second week of September would be great. Yeah, and that's a really good point. It takes time to get food services in place and busing in place to make sure all of that comes together by October 1st. The next question is a college an eligible community partner with an LEA and an ESD? Yes, that is, and oftentimes we have colleges, especially community colleges, partnering with an LEA or an ESD, providing ESL and or adult education to families and or parenting programs. You guys all decided to type your questions in really fast. Okay, the next question is it okay on the narrative to write manager, or should it be program director? This is a good question because we require two things. Site coordinators, that's an on-site person per site, and we require a director, or in your mind, that might be a manager, but we're looking for a program director. And I know some of our partners, like some of our other youth development partners, might call their people a manager, but it's all about their responsibility and the role that they'll be providing, which you will be required to post descriptions for jobs, and if the job matches what we have in our application, that's fine. But the director will be kind of like the buck stops here. They'll be responsible for all data collection. They'll be ultimately responsible to ensure all staff are supervised and receive all the information they need to run their programs, and coaching to the site coordinators, and providing professional development and budget oversight. So it's a pretty big job. So I suggest that you think about what your definition of manager is and put it against what's in our RFP for a director and see if it's a match. We have, next question is, we have one school with 76% poverty and only foundational support. Would that disqualify the entire grant proposal? No, you just would have less priority points. You need to have minimum 46% poverty. It would be helpful if you had Title I participating, but Title I eligible is okay. That means you have a high performing program. That's not that's not going to disqualify you from applying. It's just you won't get those additional priority points. Next question, in the RFP on page 5 under Washington State priorities, are you giving extra points for middle school and high school? Yes, we are. Middle school and high school that is providing college and career readiness specifically. So you have one of 4 centers. It's going to be a high school program. How would the points be awarded? You would get the extra points for that priority for funding for that one site. And it's going to be, I think the way the rubric reads is all your sites, you get full amounts, partial, you get a lesser amount, and none, you get 0. So you would get a reduction in points, but it's equitable and it's on the rubric, which you'll see later. Next question, the other schools are above 80% in comprehensive support. Oh, yeah, so that is going to be, if you have a application that has 5 schools that you're providing services to or that you're partnering with at 5 different sites, or you might be just serving 5 different schools at one site, depending on whether you're a small community and it's a community-based center. But OSPI has a matrix that's already been filled with all of the critical data from each building regarding free and reduced lunch, percentage of poverty according to free and reduced lunch, number of ELL participating students, and we have the ability to go in and select per site your building code and your building. That's why it's really important to put your building codes in and the name of the school district and the buildings so that we can easily identify who you are. And the matrix that we have that has been created for us by the federal programs people will give you also with your percent of students who are not meeting criteria for reading and math, give you a weighted score. So readers are not determining, you're going to get an average weighted score across all of your sites that you're serving. So you'll get the points that way. Next question. If you have a cohort 10 grant and funds end August 31st, would you be eligible to receive funds July 2nd if you are writing to existing needs area? How would that work? So these are for 2
Deb, can you hear me here?
Yeah?
This is Brent.
Brent.
From Walla Walla. So my question is, we have a cohort 10 grant. That grant ends August 31st. That's the end of the fiscal award. Mm-hmm. But with this new deadline, if we were to write a new grant to serve the schools being served under cohort 10, there would be overlap of funding technically with the July 2nd award based on the first fiscal year plan. So my question is, because we can't have double up of 21st century funds, would there be can this even happen? Would there be a augmentation of the cohort 10 funds to end July 2nd? If awarded, would a new grant be the funds be awarded September 1st? You know, how would that work?
So I think that we will post a response on our website about that, but I don't feel prepared to answer that question today. Just know that fiscally you're correct. You cannot mingle the funds with your old project and a new project, and the funds can't be dedicated to the same staff or the same activities. So we would have to think that through in terms of someone who is applying to serve the same exact schools and have the same staff, just pick up and carry on in the fall. My immediate response would be that you could use the funds for, you know, getting everything ready and getting up and running and posting and interviewing for new staff if you're going to need to do that. Our programs oftentimes have a lot of staff turnover, and it takes people a while to get that up and going, so you definitely would be able to use it to fund the activities, all the activities that would be necessary for the new award. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, but you definitely could not, let's give an example of that. So a program director might be fully funded to run the program in cohort 10 until August 31st. And if, you know, that program director would not want to assign any time against this new grant unless you know, figured out how to split yourself and ask for a budget revision to split your time between the two projects. And those activities would have to be very separate and directed towards operating the current project and planning for the next one.
Yes,
but we will get some better guidance from our fiscal people about that and get that out to you guys.
Thank you.
You have anything you want to add? Okay. Okay, next question. Let's see, next question. In the RP on page 13 on student outcomes 1 and 2, it indicated to increase student growth percentile for reading. Can you explain what this means, and can we use here, we'll move, no, not anymore. So our outcomes, we're required to align our outcomes from, with the OSPI student outcome accountability framework. And yes, there is, you know, looking at moving from not proficient to meeting proficiency. That's a really hard thing to do. So if you think that's a reasonable goal for you, we'd be happy to have you do that. If you're going to say only 30% of your students will do that, we would ask you to also include something for the remainder of your students who will not be able to make that. So it basically should be based on the needs of your students and how much you think they'll be able to demonstrate. Just make your goals reasonable. Next question. Can the program director for cohort 11 be listed as program director for a cohort 15 application? I think we just addressed that. Not for the same activities and not for the same FTE. Going out to bid for the evaluator. We are using an evaluator on 2 other grants and would like to use the same for this grant application. Do we still need to go out to bid? And the answer is yes. So you will need to do an informal bid, get 3 bids, and have a documented set of criteria that you're going to use to evaluate those bids. Like Heidi said, it doesn't have to be, and we have some guidance that I think that is posted in the accounting manual, which we provide a link to, that talks about contracting. And this is all about following the uniform guidance in terms of procurement for contracts. It's not just about evaluators, it's about anything that you might contract for. So if you're going to name contractors in your application who are providing services, you might think about the amount of the contract. There are like 3 tiers in terms of the amount of dollars that you want to contract for, and there are different requirements for that. So I think it's under $3,500. You don't need to do an informal bid. I know your evaluators should get paid way more than $3,500, so that's not an option for you for evaluators. But then there's a big band in the middle where you definitely have to get bids. So doesn't have to be a really big process, but there used to be federal guidance that allowed for, if you named a contractor in a grant, then you could use them, but that is no longer the case. Okay, next question. Can you please give more information on what it looks like to inform the wider community on the program? I'll give you an example of what it means to inform the wider community on that you're intending to apply. That means posting it in the newspaper, announcing it in community newsletters. So there are 2 pieces to that. One is informing the community about the program in ways that creates opportunities for outreach and recruitment and information to the community about your services. And the other is informing the community about your intent to apply for a grant. So we hope to see in your applications things that are culturally and mostly culturally and linguistically appropriate outreach to inform your communities about your services and your programs, so that folks are aware of what you have to offer them. There's also another layer of communication to the community in terms of informing potential stakeholders and partners about, you know, the opportunity that you're presenting and opportunities for partnership and collaboration. So hopefully that in terms of community outreach, we're hoping not to just see flyers posted in laundromats in communities that have low literacy rates and flyers that are not in primary language of the people residing in that community. Next question. For budgeting purposes, what will the YPQI box set cost be? It's in the RFP, and we're basically asking you to think about $1,200 per site. Okay, I think that's the end of our questions for now. So I'm going to move on, and if you think of any others, write them down or just keep putting them in the chat box, and we'll come back to them later. Okay, application instructions. Completed applications, including all required signatures, and it's really important that your signatures are there, or you will not be included in the pool of applications to be screened or read. Must be submitted by 4 p.m. on May 24th, 2018. After 4 p.m., or actually I should say at 4 p.m. on the dot, the system closes. That means the iGrant system, the online web-based grant system. So I really would recommend that you get it in, if you're running up to the last minute, plan to have it in no later than 12 noon, just to account for anything that might go wrong where you are. Every year we have, what do you think, 2 to 4 programs who don't get under the wire.
Or people calling at 3:30 saying they can't get in. And we can't guarantee iGrant staff will be there to help you. And Deb and I don't have administrative access to help you submit your application. So this is really important, especially if you're brand new to applying. Give yourself plenty of time.
And read the instructions carefully, because there are different procedures in the RFP, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but different procedures for school district and community-based entities. Applicants are required to submit proposals using our online iGrant system. So don't wait. The system is already launched today. Don't wait. You can get online and go to our iGrant system. The link is in the application. and learn how to get an access code. And inside the system, there's a tutorial, and just to kind of explore the system and then read carefully in the RFP what the process is for requesting OSPI review and submitting a completed final application. So all new users will need to create their own what's called EDS. EDS is the system where the iGrant sits. Sorry for the acronym, but it doesn't probably make sense to you, but it's our whole online system of a variety of different things besides iGrants. So you go into that system, you create an account, follow the instructions, and submit some requested information, and a password, and then you'll have an account set up. And here's the different procedures for school districts, ESD, college, university, and all other organizations, which means all other organizations, faith-based and community-based organizations. So you see, you will submit your first and last name, your email address, the legal name of your organization, the street address, business phone, and you should be all set up. So I'm going to give a kind of an overview right now about the proposal requirements and the pieces or parts and where they all come together, because it can be a little bit confusing. Parts of this application are web-based. There are some forms that are web-based, and the majority of the application is in the narrative. So there's a contact page that needs to be completed in iGrants, and the person that needs to fill out the contact page is the person you want to contact for anything about your grant award. If you already know who your program director is going to be and they're on board, it can be that person. If it's a central office person in the school district, but that person is who we will call if there's an issue with your application, or we need more information, or we need to contact you for any reason. So make sure that is the right person. The eligible entity partnership and assurance page is very important. We already talked about the importance of the partnership. Heidi, I don't know if you're going to show the iGrants pages later, so we'll actually show you that page so you can see it, but that's in iGrants. It needs to be signed by the eligible entity partners. And the partners, what we're asking for is the CEO or the superintendent of an LEA, ESD, or a community-based organization, or their designated persons. It's really important, especially if you're in a place like King County or Seattle School District or Tacoma School District, or an ESD region, to think about this idea of an entity, eligible entity partner, only getting to submit one grant. One year we had 5 applications from one of our large school districts submitted. And just know that if that happens, only one of the grants will be awarded, and it will be the highest awarded points. So even if they're all in the top 10 scoring. So it's kind of up to you to put out some feelers about other people who might be doing that. If you're working with one of the bigger school districts, ask them who else is interested in partnering. Maybe you can submit a joint application and get, but no longer is it that a school will just sign off, or let's say a school is putting themselves in jeopardy if they sign off on 4 or 5 different applications. Program profile page, which includes your site profile information, subject and curriculum information, partnership information, grant amount requested. That's also in iGrants. So the top 3 things here are all in iGrants. Program abstract is the first thing that is part of your narrative. It needs to be an uploaded part of your application. Inside the iGrants application, there's an upload page. And all of the things that you'll be creating in your narrative and uploading go to that iGrants page. So the proposal narrative is the second piece that you'll be uploading. It's 28 pages maximum, and it has the following pieces and parts that are pretty standard, designed for an RFP. Need for the program, quality of design, management plan. We're really looking in the management plan to see a timeline and a plan for how you will be up and operating by October 1st, and how you will be monitoring your implementation and success as a program to the end of the year. So it needs to be an annual management plan. Data collection and evaluation plan, same thing. Promises a model, asks you to demonstrate that you have a good likelihood that you would be a successful applicant in implementing the program you're proposing. Budget narrative page is back to iGrants. You'll complete the budget narrative page in iGrants, and then there's not an actual budget page that's presented to you in iGrants until after you are selected as to be awarded a grant, and then you have actually another budget piece that needs to be completed before you get allocated the resources, which can take up to a few weeks. So plan for that in your application timeline. Required appendices. There are four things that you need to upload into the upload page besides your narrative and your abstract, and we call these the appendices. And what we're looking for here are job descriptions, and those job descriptions are for program director, and that's in the application. It's clearly outlined who it's looking for, but it's the director, the site coordinators, the direct teaching staff, and evaluator. Number two is the program organizational chart, and we are looking for the 21st CCLC program organizational chart, not the fiscal agent's organizational chart. So let's say your ABC Youth Development Program, we're not looking for the ABC Youth Development organizational chart, we're looking for the partnership organizational chart. And there's specific things we're asking for in the rubric. Heidi suggested that the rubric is the second part of our application or presentation today. And it's really important, if you had to choose, if there's a discrepancy, and I can tell you there are a couple between our RFP and our text and our rubric, you should follow the rubric. And as you approach your narrative and any elements that we're asking you to submit, there's a couple of redundancies in our narrative where we were trying to replace language with ESSA requirements. So it's pretty clean, but if you have to choose, go with the rubric. Okay, current signed memorandum of agreement with eligible entity partners. We already talked about that. Current signed data sharing agreement and between evaluators, school principals, and eligible entity partners. So what we want to see here is a separate data sharing agreement, not part of the MOA. This year, if it is not a separate, we've been a little bit lax about it in the last few years. If it was clearly outlined in the MOA, we would really like a separate data sharing agreement. And it needs to be specific about what kinds of data will be required. So you will want to read the evaluation update to see what kinds of data we're asking for, because we are asking for more than ever student identifiable data that meets the FERPA laws, but some school principals feel that you are not, especially community-based organizations, that they can't share that, but they can. So all of that needs to be worked out upfront and in writing so that there are no questions later on.
So if you'll just bear with me for a minute, and I'm going to pull up the iGrants pages.
This is the EDS system that we talked about a few minutes ago. And our iGrants is just one part of the EDS system.
And I am in the development site, and I'm pretty sure that when you pull it up, it'll look similar, but this is the only way that I have access to it at this time. This is the first page that you will come to. It's really important that you search up here in the left-hand corner for the 18-19 fiscal period. And then you'll want to plug in form package number 845, which will bring up 21st Century Community Learning Centers Cohort 15. And that's the package that you're going to want to do all your application work in.
And it's really the only package that's available in 18-19 right now.
And the first page is the contact page. And so you'll want to fill out the main contact, which was said previously, maybe somebody different who's filling out the application, but they're going to be the person that we're going to call if we have questions. And then the alternate contact, that will be your preference. The CEDARS contact, not all of you will have that if you're applying as a CBO or a community-based organization. But if your school district has a CEDARS contact person that they want you to fill in here, that is your choice. And then there's our contact information at the bottom. If you just click on the email button here, it'll bring up our email, and it will send both of us an email if you do have a question. This page is required. There's no points assigned to it.
Just in terms of the CEDARS contact person, we kind of went over that quickly, but CEDARS is the OSPI school district ESD data collection system that collects all the data that you want to be able to share. So I would recommend you find out who your CEDARS data person is and make them your next best friend, and talk with them about your data sharing agreement and what kind of data that you're hoping to share. Under the ESSA program, there are new requirements about designing your program based on student needs, and that means you need access to student data that's generated at the building level to know where your kids are and how to target and how to develop programs for your kids. And that's not state assessment data that we're talking about. It's building-based data that school districts are using to identify kids at risk. And I mean, you might be using the state assessment first and then looking at the local data. But the local data is what you'll be able to use to monitor their progress throughout the year.
The next step that you'll want to do is come up to the competitive application tab, and it will bring up page 1, which is called Eligible Entity Partnership. And as you'll notice on this page, it has in red, read this first, where it has the 21st Century RFP request for applications. Title I eligible schools. This is an Excel sheet that will sort by, it has all kinds of features that you can sort by. You can sort by district, school, and you can sort by whether or not they're Title I serving, whether or not they're Title I eligible. So this is an important resource to look at if you're looking at a school. They have to be at least Title I eligible, and then Title I serving is where you can receive additional points.
So it might be a little misleading, but when you get to the iGrants profile page, there is the option under Title I to say Title I serving, yes, serving eligible or no. If you have a no, your program will be eliminated because they have to be either eligible or serving. So don't assume that it's even though there's a no option, no is not acceptable.
And then this next hyperlink is the comprehensive and targeted schools. And this will also sort in many different fashions. And you can sort by targeted, comprehensive, foundational, and then there's also indicators within those that give different levels of comprehensive and targeted. And we're not assigning points if you are at a comprehensive certain level or a comprehensive targeted level. It's really just broadly comprehensive or targeted supports is how points will be assigned this year to projects. As you scroll down on this page here, first is the assurances and partnerships section. This is also gives all of the same requirements for a partnership and what it would count as being eligible. This right here, you have to click on the new button.
And when you click on the new button, you're allowed two people per thing, per box, but it's not meant to be in pairs. It just comes up that way. So we're not asking you to have one of your partners be in all the boxes. We're just, you're allowed to pick new boxes, but it's not meant to be pairs of people. It's just that 2 is the minimum. So, and you will always get 2 new options every time you push the new box.
And what's really important to remember about this specific section is right here where it says signatures. So you actually have to, after you fill it out, type it in, you have to print it, and your partners have to sign it, ink signature, and scan it and upload it on the upload page on page 5, which is super important because that is a requirement to get past the screening process. And if you have more primary partners than you can fill in on this section, then you can click the new button again, and this same exact box, a mirror image will pop up again. The second new button that you can push brings up other partners that you wish to include in your application. So it says, in the space provided below, provide any additional partners that will be making contributions to this proposal grant project. And this is informational for us to see who else is contributing or making commitments to this project. And then this last box here is about external organizations. And this is really something that we're also collecting information on about what programs are proposing to partner with external organizations per this definition right here. That's also in the RFP. So it's a nonprofit organization with a record of success in running or working with before and after school programs. And in the case where there is no organization that meets this, then the nonprofit organization in the community can enter into a written agreement or partnership with this person. And so that's what that means. And then the last section on here is the compliance with program regulations and assurances. These program regulations and assurances come from the state, they come from ESSA, they come from the federal department. Please read all these carefully. These are things that you will be accountable for. These are things in the future that if you get awarded a grant will be on the monitoring checklist that we'll want to see that you're following these assurances. And at the bottom here,
there are several new ones from ESSA, so pay close attention.
And so it also has here at the bottom the authorized representative's name, and in this section you can type it in and put the date.
And again, authorized means the CEO or the superintendent or their designee. We wouldn't expect to see different people there than upfront in your partnership. And we wouldn't expect to see different people on your memorandum of understanding. They all need to be the same people, and except the building principals.
Page 2 is the program profile page. It not only gets awarded points, and secondly, it gives a ton of information to us and to the readers about this program that you're designing and building for after school. The first couple sections are about the program profile. We want your name, the grant request amount, and I put a little note in there about how this amount must match your budget narrative. They have to be the same because we take this amount that you put on page 2 as the amount that you're requesting for funding, and it's really important that that you budget accordingly on page 3, the budget narrative, that they're the same.
Some people actually, well, everyone needs to and is required to submit their partner contributions, but some people add their partner contributions to the grant, to the amount that they're going to spend out of the grant, and they put the request in here for that instead, which then creates, we are looking for the total of the amount of dollars that will be spent out of the grant award.
You want to know if you were a previously funded project? I'm going to scroll down here
in
slowly.
Any year and for any site. The answer would be yes.
And please check the boxes here if you are writing in your grant applications these priorities for funding. The readers will look at this profile page here, or this page 2, and compare it to the rubric, because they're going to be looking for evidence in your application if you marked any of these.
So if you're going to serve ELL students, we would be looking for a robust program project design that will be supporting increased language and literacy for ELL students, not just providing recreation activities to students who are coincidentally ELL.
Program address, where the program director or program administration has an office. And this is here because throughout the year, we need to collect addresses of where people are located. If we need to send you something in the mail, and or if we collect it for the data collection systems that we have, we need to have program offices and addresses. So this new button here is new this year. And it's strategically put here because we need to know specifically which school district on the left-hand side is going to be corresponding or serving the schools. Therefore, what we're instructing people to do is put a school district on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side where it says schools served by the corresponding school district in the left-hand column, we need you to put all of the schools over here that are going to be served by that school district. And it's really important that we are able to differentiate that for several different reasons. And in the past, the way the pages were set up, sometimes it was challenging and or difficult to figure out what school went with what school district. And so this is why we're doing it this way this year.
So what we're hoping that you do is don't list all of your school districts consecutively on the left-hand side that will be partnering with you, or that you'll be serving if you're a community-based organization, unless they only have one school site per district. What you need to do is allow for space or check anew. So if you're going to serve 4 sites in one school district and 3 sites in another school district, that's actually too many sites, but say you're going to have a total of 4 sites over 2 school districts, separate them in this list so we can actually tell they need to go follow along. Heidi suggests that you would put if you have 3 sites in Kennewick School District, you're going to put Kennewick School District in 3 times, and then you're going to put the name of the schools or that are going to be served in those school districts. This isn't about sites, it's about schools and buildings served and districts served.
How many sites total is this program proposing to serve, which may be different than school districts? And so think really clearly about how a site is defined. It's where services are being offered to kids. And typically it would be 1 site per building is what we would want to see.
Well, so let's clarify that really quickly. You would not have, typically what we get in our applications, here's some examples. We get applications that vary from a community-based center that is a single site, but it's serving 4 school buildings. All those kids live in possibly a low-income housing development, and they come from a variety of different schools, and the services are at the community center. That would be 1 site. Sometimes we get applications that are going to serve 4 sites. And I think what Heidi meant to say is, or what I interpreted what you said is, typically that's 1 site per building if they're school-based sites. Yeah. So,
and then we move down to the site level, and then there's some more questions here about programs are required to be operational September through the end of the school district calendar. Programs are required to operate 35 weeks a year, minimum 12 hours per week, a minimum of 2 hours per day, and what months will your school year program be in operation? So we would assume or expect everybody's going to say September through June. For each site, a site profile, this big green box here, will need to be filled out per site, which includes the site name, is it school-based, community center-based, the address where services are provided, name of the school buildings to be served. So for example, if you are a community-based site, you may have more than 1 or 2 school buildings that you're serving at this 1 site. The building address.
The names need to match the list you provided above.
Building address, school district address, and building codes. So all of the building codes that you are proposing to serve. And you can find the building codes there. They're also on that Title I spreadsheet. They have a list of building codes that go with all the buildings, and then the schools have their own codes too.
And if you are a single site that's at a school district, we suggest, just to lessen the confusion between all the variety of names, if you are at Walla Walla Elementary School, and that is your own, that is the site, just use the building name in the site name, Walla Walla Elementary.
And I apologize, I was testing this page, so I just put in a bunch of random numbers. And for student services school year, you'll want to fill out all of these boxes. These are super important, not only for the readers in the scoring rubric, and also this is what you get held accountable for your grant program, about the kids, how many hours, how many weeks, the grades, your number of enrolled students total, average daily attendance, served 30 days or more, 60 days or more, were you a previously funded CCLC program. And then you'll notice that these last 5 boxes here have for OSPI use only. Although they're fillable boxes, we would ask that you would not fill those out, because we use our average weighted score sheet to fill in the percentages here for the targeted, comprehensive. Although these will be yes, no, or partial, But percentage of EL students, Title I serving, percent of free and reduced lunch, all come from the OSPI data warehouse, as well as down here, percentage of students not proficient in reading and math. We will also get those weighted scores for all three of these here, and we go in and fill these out after you submit your application so that the readers know how to score them and assign the points accordingly.
Yeah, and I don't think you'll be blocked from putting information in there, and we will have to take it out before we can enter your the real information that's a weighted average. So please, if you are, those text boxes are open to you, please don't submit anything there.
Adult services is a requirement for funding this year. Don't forget to fill that out. If you have more than one site where you're serving students, you press the new button right here. And all of this information that I just went over, this big square box here for the site profile will pop up again. And you'll need to fill it out for the new site. So this exact page right here you're looking at will come up again. Make sure that you often click enter or save at the top, because if you happen to get kicked out of the site or your computer dies, it doesn't necessarily save it by itself. It's mostly manual enter or press the save button.
Where is the save button? I don't see it. Oh, the top of each page, not each section.
Here.
Oh, thank you. Important to know. So don't make the assumption that just because you entered something and moved to a new page that it's going to be there. And like Heidi said, if you put, you're going to have 4 sites for this project up above, and then we're going to be looking to see that you have 4 site pages with all of this data per site. And then when you get to the activity pages, which Heidi's going to show you, 4 activity pages, 1 for each site, and including adult services.
And this summary of site profiles for school year is kind of an FYI for you, and it will average the hours, the weeks, and number of enrolled students. It will add that. It will average the daily attendance per each site you put in. It has the data in the form package to go ahead and do that for us. And so the student services and the summary right here is something that you do not need to fill in. It's something that we use for our purposes here to collect information and also for purposes of reading and scoring grants.
So it self-calculates. Last year, so if you are in there and it should show up for you. You should see it, the self-calculation. If you notice that it's not working, please email us, because we had some boxes that weren't working last year.
This is the activities that will be provided to students and families. And you may notice that the authorized activities here on the left-hand side are exactly from ESSA authorized activities that we went through earlier in the slideshow. And we'll want to see here on the right-hand side the curriculum that corresponds with the activities that is going to be for your targeted population of students that aligns with any of these activities, which ones that they'll go through.
And remember, under ESSA, the new requirements are that your instruction and your programs align with the instruction and curriculum of the school day. And this would be a good place to demonstrate that. We're not asking you to do the same activities that are being done during the school day, but this is really a good place in your program planning and thinking about your program. There might be materials or things that you and your partners decide would be great supplementary things to the school day, project-based learning kinds of things that would extend the learning that's happening during the day. But this is where we'll look for thoughtful alignment. Plus later on where we ask you to talk about your research-based or evidence-based practices.
And so the first top here is for students, and then the second half here is a section for families. And this is where we will want to see your targeted population of students and families, what you propose to be offering for them. And this will come up, this box here for activities will come up for school year. And then when we get down here to the second half of the page, there's a summer profile that will have to be filled out too. Very similar to school year. Click the new button. You'll fill out your site profile. Similar hours, days, weeks, the grades, number enrolled, how many you're going to serve. And then it will average it for you in the summer profiles, because for each site, again, you'll want to fill out another profile. And then this activity box is down here. Don't forget to fill it out for school year and to fill it out for summer.
Which is a new feature.
It is new.
For us, you used to fill out one activity per site, one activity page, and we didn't get enough information to really see what was going on in our summer programs. So we decided to give you an opportunity to share with us in a different way what you're proposing for summer, because it seems that's a much more intensive opportunity for learning and doing great things.
So again, students, families, and there's a new button down here in the left-hand corner if you need to fill it out for another site. So I'm going to go back here to the top of the page, and we're going to go to page 3 in iGrants. Page 3 is the budget narrative. So this has all of the categories in here where funds are allowed to be spent. I know in the slides coming up too, there's more detail about what it looks like and how to fill this page out. And so what we would want to see is cost calculations for each category so that we know how the money is being used and spent. And you'll want to put in all your certificated and classified staff. And for example, if you're hiring a site coordinator, if you're hiring them for 20 hours a week, we would want to see 20 hours a week times $18 an hour equals so much per week, and that's so much per year. So really detailed cost calculations give the readers a better idea of what you're proposing to do with your funds, and also here for us as well gives us a better idea to see how the program is being managed. And supplies and materials for the program, instructional resources, and travel, which is more detailed in the RFP, is travel assigned to staff. So travel assigned for going to meetings, any in-state travel, out-state travel, those types of things. And the transportation section is transportation for students. We would want to see busing, or if you have other means of transportation that you're thinking about, we would want to see that there too. Professional development or staff development opportunities that you're thinking about purchasing or offering.
And that really needs to, this section will be evidence for part of the application that's really important. We have in the quality of project design or the management plan, I'm not thinking which one it is right now, but I think it's quality, it's in the management plan. So what we ask you to do is to demonstrate your professional development plan at a local level. And what we're looking for is ongoing, sustained and regular opportunities for staff to gather. It could be incorporate your professional development opportunities could be incorporated into staff development. So, or it could be that you're sending folks to targeted trainings based on their needs. And based on the areas that you're trying to improve for your program. But it won't be just conferences, although it might include some conferences. So there is a section down below for conferences. This professional development box is really for any expenditures that you're going to use to pay staff extra, or you're going to hire speakers to come in and do training for you, for your staff.
And then also here in the evaluation section, we'll want to see what you're paying your evaluators. So remember, it's a cap at 10% of your total allocation or total grant amount that you have requested. And we'll want to see what you're paying them hourly, how much time you're contracting with them for services, if you're planning on, which is encouraged, to have allocated enough funds for your evaluator to attend some professional development with you and or to come to some of the YPQI trainings. That is also something that's allowable.
Well, it's required, actually. So you as a program are required to pay for your evaluators on an annual basis to get what's called an external assessor refresher. So evaluators are required to do external observations for every site. They're required to do 2 external observations. You as a program will be required to pay for their travel, for their time, for their training to be certified to do that. So it's not just a recommendation, it's a requirement. And we suggest that you also pay for your evaluators to attend the director evaluator meetings, or build that into their contracts, that you also build into your contract with them time, travel, and lodging to attend the Planning with Data meeting in the spring, because they are a really valuable person on your assessment team in terms of looking at where your strengths and your areas for improvement are and making plans for your improvement plans. So we have some evaluators who regularly attend every year, and your evaluator is one of the most important people in your team in terms of helping you think through what all the data means, where your areas of strength are, and they are required to give you recommendations for improving the quality and outcomes for your programs. So you need to pay them for that.
And then conferences are allowed also, and we would want to see and hear what conferences you're proposing to attend each year. And if you're planning on traveling out of state, for example, to the Boost conference, which is happening right now, we would want to see how much the registration is and how many people that you're proposing to send to conferences. And really be mindful of the fact that, that it needs to be something that's within reason and allocable for your program, and not an exorbitant cost to attend lots of conferences per year, is what I would say.
And there are some nice conferences out there that target, you know, just hands-on professional development for folks who are really mostly engaged with youth at the service delivery level. There are other programs and conferences that target school district staff and or other folks that you might be collaborating with. And then there's some programs that are like more for administrators and thinking about program design and policies. We suggest you really think about that and target the conferences that will really support what your goals and objectives are for your program and your staff development.
And facilities, so you can use funds to, for example, rent a space if you need to pay cleaning staff, those types of things. It's not for necessarily construction or remodeling. You can't use it for that. And facilities is usually an area that we see quite a bit of partner contributions if you're being housed at a school district or community-based organization where they provide in-kind support, such as the janitorial staff, the heat, the electric, and just the space in general. They provide that space for you to use. And the YPQA box set of materials, this is a minimum of $1,200 per site, and no additional funding will be included in grants. It's something that you need to budget for in your grant. And in the RFP and also in the slides coming up, there is a menu of things that will be included in the YPQA box set of materials. And then the indirect rates down here, yes, you can claim indirect rates. And it's different for community-based organizations and ESDs and community colleges than it is for school districts. And we use the federal restricted indirect rate. So that's the column that you'll want to look at when you're looking for it in these hyperlinks.
And remember that all of the things that would normally be considered indirect costs, and an indirect cost is anything that is like charged to an organization as a regular operating cost, like the janitorial and the lights and the cleaning, might be better served under indirects than a direct cost. The direct cost would be the fair market value for the space that you're using. And try not to mingle indirects in your direct asks in your budget, because that's kind of double dipping. So really try and think through with your partners what's normally an indirect cost calculation for any one of your partners, and you don't want to put that in a direct charge against the grant.
Page 4 is also a requirement, although there are no points assigned to it. This is a federal requirement that we have some way or some measure to assess the level of risk of grantees. And the fiscal agent will need to fill this out completely and press save. I'm not going to go through it. It's pretty much just yes or no. And some of them, if it's yes, for whatever reason, you may have to give some explanation.
And you might really want to go through this with your partners, because it's not just about you. It's about your partnership.
Page 5 is the upload page. And this is where you need to upload all your materials and your narrative, your abstract, your job descriptions, your organizational chart, your signed data sharing agreement, and your signed MOA. And you'll want to use the upload feature here. And it's really helpful if you actually name them, what it's named here, program director, site coordinator descriptions, and so forth and so on. And this is all the stuff that has to be uploaded by May 24th by 4 p.m. because the system actually closes and it will not allow you to submit anything else because it's a competitive competition. It has to be set up like that to actually close down.
Yeah, the system actually shuts down. It won't allow you to get in at 4.
So those are the iGrants pages.
So if you have additional questions, I see there are quite a few here. Okay, I see there are, if you have additional questions, and we only have about 17 minutes left, and we have several things that we need to cover, just know that if we don't get to all of your questions today, which we hope to do, we will need to post the answers to your questions later. Okay, so what I'm going to go over now, and hopefully you all got a great orientation to the iGrant system. I think that's, remember, I don't know that we went through what you do after you get everything done, but what you need to do is to revisit that process for submitting your grant application, and see how many steps you have. Anyone who's a school district who's applying for a grant has a 2-step process, and an ESD is the same way. So what you have to do is first check the application is completed, and then it gets forwarded on to another district level person. So you want to make sure that district level person, you know who they are, you have their phone number, they know you're submitting a grant, They know when to expect it coming through. They're not going to be on vacation, and they're going to be ready to then push the button that says request OSPI approval. Because if it doesn't get through that second tier, it won't get submitted to us, and it'll just be sitting there as unfinished. And those grants will not be read or included in the, and that's really a travesty to do all that work, submit a grant, and then not have it be forwarded for approval. For community-based organizations, you have a one-step process, but you have to do both pieces yourself. So, I mean, you have a two-step process, but you don't have to forward it to anybody else. You just have to make sure you do both steps. Okay, now here's the narrative pieces of the application are what we're going to review right now, and I'm going to recommend that you go strictly by the rubric that's going to be published. I noticed there's a couple of discrepancies between the rubric and what's in here, not really big ones, but this in general will give you an idea and most of the details. The need for the program is very specific, tend to all the requests about what we're looking for, but basically we're looking for you to be able to demonstrate at the community level, not the county level, not the regional level, but where the community, where you're going to provide services, the at-risk populations. So we want very specific information, the percentage of students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, the number below proficiency in math and reading by grade level, English language learners, if you've checked that box, and special education, even if you haven't checked that box, it's nice to know what your population and your at-risk population is, no matter how small. Students not at risk for not graduating on time, which you'd be able to get from your school district. And then the high school dropout rate, which you can either get online at a school district's report card. And a lot of this information is available on the OSPI website per building. The applicant describes the target population and criteria used to identify and recruit the target population of students and families. So this is a really critical piece. So just think about it this way. There's this larger pool of students in your community that makes you eligible to apply. You will never probably be able to serve all of those students. So how are you going to develop what's your criteria going to be specifically for who gets targeted, who gets invited, who are the kids you really want to move the dial on? Who are you wanting to work with to support them? Because there are no other, they really need additional resources to be successful. So this is different than who's eligible. This is who are you targeting? And you need to have a specific set of criteria about how you're going to select, say, 100 students out of 250. Okay, the applicant describes any during school programs, so we want you to think about any other programs that are being conducted at your school, either during the day or after or out of school time, that provides expanded learning opportunities for kids. And you're going to have to name them, talk about them, know who they are, and how this program is going to add to the services that are already there and meet an identified, an unmet identified need. So we're looking to be additive to communities where there are already a lot of services. The applicant describes academic, social, emotional, cultural assets and needs of students and families to be served. Now, this says if you conducted, well, this is where there's a discrepancy. In the RFP, it says, if you conducted surveys, please include it in your needs assessment. But we suggest that you have youth and parent information about interests, needs, and desires for programming, and that you include that in your needs statement. So the next section is quality of program design in the narrative, and it has very important separate pieces, and each piece has its own set of points. So just follow, I suggest for this whole application, you look through the rubric ahead of time. You think about all the different parts that we're going to be asking information about. And we really, this year, tried to remove any duplication, except probably for the needs statement, because we're going to fulfill or fill in a lot of the information that we're asking you to provide in the profile page, but we're asking you to know what that is ahead of time for your needs statement. So in the quality of project design, there's the needs statement and the bullets that we just looked at. The needs statement and the quality of project design, it's called program description. It doesn't really have that title in the application, but it's the first part of the quality of project design, and this is where we ask you to submit or develop a matrix with your global goals, objective, measures of student success, all of the things that we talked about earlier in the presentation. And this is a new feature this year. We're asking for 4 program goals in this table or matrix that are specifically aligned to the state performance targets that we talked about earlier, that are all listed on pages 13 through 15 in the RFP. So the first thing they're split into student outcomes, quality services, attendance, and program implementation. So we're looking for goals across, or looking for you to reflect 4 goals, and at least 1 has to be around adult services. So we're going to ask you to put that matrix together, and you can see in the directions or in the rubric that you get a specific amount of points for that matrix. And then there are some narrative pieces that we want you to include, and that is describing how your activities are expected to improve student academic achievement, as well as overall student success and related activities. This is new essay language, so these are new pieces in the application. We'll ask you to talk about what are the best practices, including research or evidence-based practices that you're going to use, and some information about them, and how those practices or activities are activities that will complement and enhance the academic performance, achievement, and post-secondary or workforce preparation, and positive youth development of students. So know that what we're looking for here is, how is this aligned, how is this based on student needs, how is this aligned with what's going on in the school day, and what kind of research-based practices are you using to target those needs? Okay, so this next slide is kind of a sample of what your goals, measurable objectives, measures of student success, and you'll see those are local building-based measures of student success. We're not looking for state assessment data here. We're looking for how you're going to assess the needs of your students at a local level and monitor their progress throughout the year. Okay, moving on, another area of the quality of project design includes recruitment and retention of students. We have some new bullets in here, but again, we're looking for you to think about how you're going to identify and recruit your targeted students. So it needs to be going back to your needs statement and who you're targeting, and how you will engage private schools and eligible private school students and homeschoolers in the services. So your private school students and homeschool students need to fit your targeted criteria also. We want you to talk about how you're going to retain students over time. We have data that shows that students who remain in the program for 2 years or more have the best outcomes, and that those outcomes last over time. We're asking you to describe how you're going to inform and engage private schools. Now this is in here twice, Heidi. I think that we have 3 different, I think this...
That's a typo, sorry. It was only supposed to be there once.
So number 1 is the describing how you identify and recruit low-performing students, and that includes private schools and eligible homeschoolers. But the 3rd bullet down here is actually how are you going to inform and engage private schools in the planning of this program and in the provision of the services. Let's see. So this is all about the family engagement, and it's kind of a redundant. We've already talked about all the different opportunities for providing families, but we asked you to specifically describe the services in more detail rather than just checking the box and talking about a curriculum. Good place to talk about what your partners are providing there too, if they are. Linkages to the school day is the next section in quality of project design. This is a critical piece under ESSA. There's a lot of focus here. So pay attention to the different things that we're asking for, but we're asking you to talk about the ways in which you'll be connected to the regular school day and give you a variety of examples to think about, but we're looking for really close communication on an ongoing basis with principals, teachers, school support staff, and membership on school improvement teams or other leadership groups. Use of space transportation arrangements are more kind of like in-kind contributions, but the other pieces are required, because under the new ESSA rules, we are really required to have really strong partnerships between schools and community-based organizations. So the next one is describe how your activities are aligned to the challenging state academic standards. The standards are available under teaching and learning on the OSPI website. Think about the kids you're targeting, what their educational needs are. Think about the schools that you want to work with. Are they behind in reading, behind in math? Are they really targeting for their school improvement plans or their targeted and comprehensive supports? Whatever it is they're targeting for improvement is what you should be working towards also, in terms of supporting the kids that really need additional help. So working together on that and thinking about what their focus is something you would want to align to. So talking again about describing how these activities that you're going to be providing will be targeted to the students' needs and aligned to the regular curriculum instructions of the school day. Transportation and safety, I think Heidi's already kind of gone over that, but a little bit in terms of the requirements up in front under the statute. But these give you specific items to address in detail in your application. So if I were writing for this grant, I would follow this exact outline. I would use the headings per section in the narrative and then use the subheadings and include all of the bullets that you want, that are asked for in the rubric to get the full points. That's the best way to get the highest scoring grant, and the grant that answers all of the things we're looking for. Okay, now looking at the management plan, the first part of the management plan, as Heidi talked about before, is the staffing design, and we'll ask you to talk about your FTE. Even though we asked you to put it in the budget, we're going to look for consistency between your narrative and your budget. So make sure that you have the bottom or the minimum requirements met. And that is a point, we're looking for site coordinators to have a 0.5, program directors a 0.5 or full-time equivalent. If you have a program with one site, it's allowable for you to have 0.8 FTE for a combined program director and site coordinator. Let's see.
And it's really important too, if you're an applicant with several grants, that the director can only be written into the same person, only two grants.
Right.
So you can be a 0.5 on 2 grants, but if you write a third grant, it has to be a different person who is identified as the program director per the rules and instructions that are in the RFP.
Yeah. So this next one, the next bullet here, that, oh wait, sorry, can you go back one? This, pay attention to what's actually in the rubric, not on the slide, because we reworked the words in the rubric. Basically what we're asking for here in number 2 is for you to submit all of the job descriptions for the required staff and managers in your program as uploads in iGrant, and that's basically how you'll get your points for this number 2 bullet. Number 1, you're just going to meet the requirements, but you're going to describe it. We actually don't ask you to describe the qualifications because we felt that was redundant. So we're just asking you to provide the qualifications through the job description. We did ask you to do both last year. So we do ask you to identify the strategies you're going to use to recruit and maintain high quality management and instructional staff that will facilitate the implementation of student-focused, high-quality, project-based learning that's aligned with challenging state academic standards that goes beyond the traditional classroom. So we know that staffing our programs is one of the biggest challenges there are, and keeping staff over time is a challenge too. So we advocate that you pay your staff as well as you can, and that you plan on paying for them for all additional meetings or staff meetings or professional development opportunities that they're going to need to go to. Some of you working with school districts have like negotiated contract salaries and hours that you can work with staff for that job category, but you can write in additional pay for additional work in those settings, so we encourage you to do that. The next part of this management plan has to do with the professional development plan. We want you to submit professional development plan for staff that are going to be participating in your program. And we want to think about all the things that we're asking you to do, from meeting the goals that you're setting, providing evidence-based instruction, delivering academic content that's aligned with the school day, and think about all those things and how are you going to prepare your staff to do that. This is like one of the most important pieces about what we're hoping will happen for students. So think about all of these pieces and kind of where your staff sits right now and where they really need support for improving in certain areas, and build that into your plan. This is, looks like the last bullet of the management plan, or the last indicator. And we ask for a detailed plan and timeline for program implementation, monitoring of your progress as a program and implementing your program, and kind of thinking about how you'll reflect towards the end of the year on your success and how you'll plan for the next year. So, and in this plan, you'll need to have as one of your benchmarks or one of your measurements that your program is up and running on October 1st. So this is an annual plan, and what we mean by a plan is that you'll have key benchmarks to identified for yourself in terms of hiring staff, recruiting students, recruiting staff, contracting with partners or providers in your community, securing space, you know, all the things that are required for launch. And then kind of what would you be doing in a couple of months later, a few months later, in terms of monitoring the progress of your staff and implementing what you want them to do, providing coaching, monitoring the progress of your students towards the end of the year, starting to collect the data, all the things that you need to do to see how you're doing, and then how you're going to use all that data and information to plan for the next year. That's what we mean by a management plan. Data collection and evaluation. It's pretty specific. Just look at our, there are 4 different things here, and if I was you, I would go through and identify the key words in thinking about how these things are different, because they have a lot of the same words in them. But the first one is basically identifying the qualifications and experience for your evaluator. We want you to prove that your evaluator is highly qualified, and saying that they've done it for the last 4 years does not demonstrate that. So you could either incorporate in this bullet experience and preparation that you know, kind of build it like a job description, or include your local evaluator's job description in the other job descriptions in the appendices, especially if you don't have one that's gone through an informal bid process that you've hired. Okay, the second part of this is we're looking specifically for a plan for your local evaluation. This is the local evaluation piece, and you'll find local evaluation guidelines on our website. We're looking for this part of the data and evaluation piece to be focused on program improvement at the local level, identifying some key questions you want to answer about how well you're doing as a program, and your intended goals for the program or the project. This number 3 is more about how a plan for collecting the data that's required by the federal government. It's called the 21 APR data tracking, collection and input. All of these pieces are in our data and evaluation update. Really specific plan and dates for all of that. I think it will just make the assumptions that it will happen at the same time next year that happened this year in terms of planning. But what we're really looking for is having you think about a plan for making sure that you're tracking all the data that you need to track, and you have people in place to do that. You have people in place to submit it. This next one is the same kind of thing, only it's for the youth program quality assessment and intervention tools. This is a quality assessment at the local level. But again, there's a requirement for conducting assessment, collecting data, and then submitting data in an online reporting system. Number 5 is switching to thinking about how you're going to use all the results from your local evaluation, your leading indicator reports, all the data that you've collected in the top 4 bullets. What are your strategies for sharing that with staff and stakeholders to promote program improvement and sustainability? Number 6, thinking about this last item. This is points that will be awarded for submitting the data sharing agreement that we suggested that you will be uploading in the iGrants. And what needs to be in that data sharing agreement. Okay, we are past our time, 10 minutes. I apologize for that. And we didn't get to the rest of the questions, and we didn't get all the way through. So I think I'm going to just give a couple of last minutes on this promise as a model. And not the promise of the model as a model asks for 5 different items. I think you should really pay close attention to them. This is where you, number 1 is where you provide evidence of past performance and just demonstrate your capability for implementing the program that we're asking for. So, and it's not just for you, the person who's submitting the application, it's for all of your partners. So let's say you're working with the YMCA and you're a school district. The school district has never had an after-school program before, but has done some other kinds of youth development programs or participated in some other opportunities, or wants to use their own academic performance to demonstrate their capacity to make progress for students. But we'll be asking for specific data to demonstrate your capacity here, whether or not you've been a prior 21st CCLC program, a community-based youth development program, or a school district. You can use your prior, if you were a prior recipient of a 21st CCLC program, we highly suggest that you use all the data that you've been collecting for the past 5 years. Usually, if you don't, you will not receive much credit for it. Number 2, we're asking you to submit evidence demonstrating your ability in other ways besides out-of-school time programming to provide educationally related activities that enhance academic achievement and positive youth development. Number 3 is your signed memorandum of understanding. Number 4, this is a really critical piece. This is right out of the statute. All programs under 21st CCLC programs are required to collaborate with other state and federal programs. And as I said already, under ESSA, this is a really big focus for not replicating services and duplicating, and it's really important not to compete with other programs for the same students. It's better to join hands and expand and enhance the opportunity for all students. So we'll be looking to see a description here of how you work with Title I, Title III, migrant and bilingual, TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families that provides other kinds of supports to families, maybe housing programs for families in low-income communities, working with the food and nutrition program, many variety of programs that are available out there, not just through the schools, that's supporting the families in your community. How are you going to collaborate with them to coordinate services and reduce duplications? So Heidi already went over the whole budget narrative, so we don't really need to cover that. And YPQI materials are, I'm going to suggest that we talked about the $1,200 minimum, which covers this. There's a change in our service packages this year. It's not by individual slot to attend a training. You basically get a site package that allows for all the people in your site to go. And it's much more streamlined and simplified, and you should plan definitely for the $1,200 to cover all of your staff to attend. I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and answer these questions online right now so that we have it recorded on our, Heidi, can you bring that back up? Oh, let me see. Here it is. I'm going to go ahead and answer the questions that are available. I think that Heidi gave you a pretty good overview of how to submit and how to get into iGrants, and know that there are narrated tutorials. But I'm going to switch now to answering your questions. So the last question that we had submitted that we talked about was, find it. Had a lot of questions submitted to them. Okay. So family event requirements of 4 hours minimum per month. Does that apply to both the school year and the summer? We did not make that requirement that it be both the school year and the summer, but it needs to be at least the school year. Summer would not suffice because it needs to be ongoing and sustained, and it needs to have specific goals and objectives where you're really trying to change learning and opportunities for families. Now, next question. So do all of the partners on the MOA need to be listed on the assurances and sign both? Yes, that's true. You want to have, think about who the primary partners are. On the MOA, the people that you want to add is the principals. Can you think of anybody else? I mean, you're not going to get dinged for adding additional people, but at minimum, it should include all the people that you have on your partnership page. MOA can include other people and other partners that you really want to detail in your plan. But we don't expect to see an MOA that doesn't have a signature from the CEO or the superintendent of the two primary minimum partners for eligibility. Next question. If there are multiple grants from one school district and they are the higher scoring grants, who decides which grants will be funded and how those decisions be made? We really hope we aren't presented with that challenge. So what I would do when you go to the school district is ask if anyone else has asked to partner with the school district, and think about how you might collaborate together and create a bigger grant. But in order to answer your question, if we do get presented with that challenge, the peer reviewers will decide who has which application meets the criteria for funding the best and has the highest score and the highest potential and is recommended for funding. The other things that come into our recommendations for funding, there's some written guidance about should we get close to a tie. And I think in the RFP it says we'll go with the highest poverty community. If there are two, that would be too close to call. But in this situation, it would be the highest quality project would be funded. And the additional piece is a geographic spread for the state. So that would be the ultimate decision that would be made in the recommendations. Is one of, well, I guess it'd be in the same geographic region, so that wouldn't be probably make the tiebreaker. Okay, next question. The rubric is not posted as of this minute, but we hope to have it posted by this afternoon or tomorrow. On page 20 under transportation and safety, the last sentence in the first paragraph says, applicants must include a written transportation plan between partners that includes. It is not listed to be posted in the required appendices. That's correct. So follow the rubric on this, because we actually, this is one of the areas where there's a little bit of discrepancy. The rubric has 3 things that we ask you to describe, and that would be part of that plan. So we're not asking you to actually submit a transportation plan. We're asking you to describe pieces of your transportation safety plan. Correct? Yeah. What are the requirements for spacing and font sizes in tables that are included in the narrative?
It's on page 18 in the RFP, and it's 11-point calibri font, 1.5 spacing, 1-inch margins, a maximum of 28 pages allowed. And it doesn't, there's no requirement for the spacing of the tables. It just has a general requirement for the proposal narrative.
And we have had people call and ask about that. We ask that you think about readability. And because reviewers get a little bit cranky when they can't read things, so I wouldn't suggest going below a font size that you're comfortable reading. For the next question, it's about family engagement. Can we have the activities identified now, but take the summer to figure out the providers that we will bring in to perform the activities? So what you're going to be asked to do is to think about what the needs of your families, the needs and interests of your families are, and they will need to meet the identified need you put in your need statement, or match, I should say. And what we want you to do is design a plan based on your goals that you're going to have for your families. We want to see some intentionality here, and that your activities are going to be consistent and connected over time. We realize you don't have a lot of resources to serve all the families, so again, you're going to be targeting specific families that maybe you're going to provide services that maybe aren't available to your families somewhere else, or services to your families that are very specific to your schools. And think about what those might be. That's what we're looking for predominantly, and how they will support the goals that we've outlined in the RFP. Thinking about who's going to perform the activities. In the matrix, if that under the staff responsible, you might be contracting with providers to do that, or contract with partners to do that, but who in your program is going to be ultimately responsible for oversight to ensure that those activities meet the needs and the targets or objectives that you've identified. So it doesn't have to be the provider specifically, but the people that will be ensuring that it's happening. Last year, there's an extra 3 pages were added to the narrative specifically regarding EL populations.
It was just a general extra 3 pages.
No, we did not add 3 pages for EL populations last year.
No, I said it was just a general extra 3 pages to the narrative, the whole narrative.
We didn't, yeah. Last year, the pages that we added were a flexible 3 extra pages for you to use how you wanted, because folks said that they didn't really have enough, they couldn't fit everything in that they wanted to include. For you, that may have been about EL populations, but we've kept the same page restriction at 28. We've increased page restrictions from 25 to 28 last year, and we're keeping it at 28 this year. So it's not an extra, it's just giving you flexibility for more space. Is there an MOA and data sharing agreement template, or can we create? You can look at what's required in there and create your own. What we're asking you to do is not a matrix. We do not want to see a matrix with very little detail in it, 1 page, and everybody's signature on it. That is not a memorandum of agreement. That is a signature page. I think that's it.
Yep, there are no more questions in the chat. Oh, shoot. If you have additional questions, our contact information is on the last slide here, and I'm sorry, I just exited out of it. Please feel free to email. The webinar will be recorded. It won't be available until the end of the week or next week because it has to be converted to a YouTube video and transcribed to be ADA compliant to post it on our website. Although if you email us, we would be happy to email you the PowerPoint. And please go to our website to look for all the supporting documents and materials, which is the RFP, Title I, Comprehensive Targeted, Rubric, and there's also a link to the iGrant pages.
And an additional link that we'll be creating for you that is not there now is the link to the school districts who are interested in participating, to the private schools who are interested in participating and what school districts they're in.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and the recording will stop.
Thank you for coming, and good luck to you all. And don't hesitate to contact us if you need help.